Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. All right, so today we are finishing right mindfulness, the seventh factor of the Eightfold Path. So I did split this one up. So last week I did the first part of right mindfulness, and today I'll finish up the second part of right mindfulness. Right mindfulness is Samyak Sati. So the second part of mindfulness composes of the four foundations of mindfulness from the Satipatthana Sutra, which is the kind of contemplation part of meditation, other than samatha, which is concentration meditation. Vipassana, which is part of four foundations of mindfulness, is the contemplation piece. So the four foundations of mindfulness is contemplation of, or mindfulness of body, feelings, mind, and objects of mind. And so I think it was last year we covered the four foundations of mindfulness in class, the meditation class, which took several months. So I'm going to try to condense all that in the next 30 minutes. So bear with me. So I'm going to try my best to consolidate this. So the first of the four foundations of mindfulness is mindfulness of body, which composes of a few different pieces. So I'm going to, again, compress them down to 3 or 4 aspects or characteristics. But the first one, of course, as we know, the Buddha begins his exposition of mindfulness of body with contemplation of mindfulness of breath, sati, anapanasati, which is the most basic foundational contemplation of body that we can go with, right? It's the breath. Since breath is something that we constantly have with us, right? It's always a means and it's a means and direct access to contemplation or meditation by using the breath. And so in the Anapanasati Sutra, or in mindfulness of breathing, the Buddha gives us 16 exercises in that sutra, in that discourse. But for the foundations, we're just going to use the first 4 of those exercises. And recollect or using those exercises as our object of meditation. And so as we go through the contemplation of body, again, we'll have different types of characteristics or different proponents of this factor. And breath is the first. And as we kind of go through it, it gets a little bit more challenging in those exercises. But the breath, again, is the juice of life, right? It's something that we cannot stop doing, and something that we always have with us. But because it is something we always have with us, it's something that we do habitually, right? The body naturally breathes for us. We have no true mindfulness, no true awareness of breathing. And so when we practice mindful breathing, it's literally bringing that, we're really honing down and exposing all the parts of the breath. Because unless you're panting, for instance, right? Or you're angry, where the body starts to tense up, starts to heats up, and our breathing starts to be deeper and heavier. Those are really the only times where we truly notice the breath, right? And so it's never really in focus. It's never the main character of our meditation. But when we practice mindful breathing, we are bringing it into the spotlight, and we are making the breath the main character. And so then we start to follow all the bits and pieces of the breath from the very beginning of the inhale all the way through its journey to the very last part of the exhale. And that's where those 16 exercises from the Anapanasati Sutra comes in. But again, we're only using the first 4. And the first 4 are breathing in a long breath, I know that I'm breathing in a long breath. Breathing out a long breath, I know I'm breathing out a long breath. Breathing in a short breath, I know I am breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath, I know that I'm breathing out a short breath. Breathing in, I'm aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I'm aware of my whole body. Breathing in, I calm my whole body. Breathing out, I calm my whole body. And again, this is just the first 4 of 16 of the exercises in the mindfulness of breathing discourse. But essentially, the whole premise of these exercises is to have you observe the totality of the breath cycle, right? It is whether we are focusing on the anapana spots, right? The anapana literally means in, out, right? And so the anapana spot's really this area right above your lip, below your nostrils, the anapana spot. And so when we're breathing in, we're focusing our attention right here in this little area. So as we breathe in, again, we're using these exercises. As long as the breath long? Is it short? Is it smooth? Is it coarse? Is it heavy? Is the air cold? Is it warm? We're really analyzing the type of breath that we're having. We're analyzing how we breathe and how we breathe during this exercise. And then as we start to notice more of this breath, and it starts to become more subtle and calm, right? Because typically, as we're doing the motions of life and we sit down for meditation, the breath is going to be unbalanced for the first few minutes, right? Typically it takes about 5 minutes for the body to settle, 5 to 7 minutes before the body settles. And so within those first few minutes of sitting down, the breath is unbalanced, right? It's either too deep or too shallow or too coarse. It's not where it's supposed to be in a meditative state. But as it starts to become more calm and subtle, right, then we start seeing those changes as we go through the different exercises. And by the time we get to the third exercise of the 4, and I'm aware of my whole body, this is where the breath becomes so subtle that there's this synchronicity between mind and body, where the body is calm, the mind is calm, and the breath is calm. And then the 4th exercise is where everything is kind of in sync. Like my whole body is calm, breathing in and breathing out. So that's the first part of contemplation of body. The second component is also noticing the different postures and the movements of the body. So whether you're sitting, standing, laying down, or walking, or whatever it may be, whatever action the body is doing, whatever movements the body is doing, you want to be aware and mindful of it, right? And so as you sit, right, there's going to be a natural movement that the body wants to do, whether it's adjusting the posture, whether it's straightening your back or your shoulders. All these are perfectly fine movements to do. But we have to use I'm hearing myself. We have to use the contemplation, we have to use mindfulness in order to actually see them happen and be aware of them. And so, the mic died. So we have to be aware. Leon, can you turn that off? It's distracting. So as we adjust our bodies, we also want to be mindful of those changes and to not do them abruptly. So if you do have to make an adjustment in the body, which is perfectly fine, right? Be mindful of it. And so if you do have to make that adjustment, just make the mental note adjusting or correcting or shifting or moving, right? And just continue doing that, right? Because we have to the more we practice being mindful on the cushion, the more natural mindfulness comes to us off the cushion, right? Because mindfulness is really something that we have to practice 24/7 eventually, right? And it's, of course, very difficult to practice mindfulness 24/7. But as we started getting into the habit of being mindful of the mundane things that we do and the small tasks and things that we do, the easier and the more natural it becomes over time. The third exercise here on mindfulness of the body is the kind of analytical contemplation that exposes the body's real nature. And this is a meditation on the body's unattractiveness, or the reflections or repulsiveness on the 32 parts of the body. Patikulamanasikara. Say that fast 10 times. But this is the meditation on the unattractiveness of the body, that helps counter the infatuation that we have with the body, especially in the form of sexual desire. And so the Buddha teaches us that sexual desire drives some manifestation of craving, thus a cause of our suffering that has to be reduced and released as a precondition for bringing suffering to an end. And so the meditation aims at weakening that sexual desire that's depriving. Sorry, let me read this quote. The meditation aims at weakening sexual desire by depriving the sexual urge of its cognitive perception of the body as sensually alluring. So sensual desire rises and falls together with this perception. And so we use this exercise we use visualization with this exercise to aid us in dissecting the body and all its components, right? I'm not going to go through the whole list of 32 parts, but essentially just think of all the 32 parts of the body. The head, the hair, the eyes, the skin, the internal organs, urine, sweat, pus, etc., right? So there are 32 parts. And so if we're able to contemplate these 32 parts and see really just how gross the body really is, that should counteract our sexual desires or attractiveness toward things. This isn't a practice to cause any aversion toward the body necessarily, but it just helps us see that the beauty that we see in people and things is impermanent, right? And so the same way that we want to go have sex with a corpse, 99.999% of people want to do that. And so this meditation helps us see the true reality of the body, right? The true nature of the body. The last exercise I'll mention is contemplation of the body's disintegration after death, also called death meditation or cemetery meditation. This is essentially also a visualization meditation where we visualize the decomposition of the body and how the body decomposes over time, right? And how it festers and starts to bloat and change color and all this other grossness of the body, right? And as we practice, and this is one of the most important meditations, especially for monastics, for monks and nuns, is meditation on death. And the body, or the Buddha tells us that as we start to practice this meditation, we have to consider that this body, now so full of life, has the same nature and is subject to the same fate. It cannot escape death, cannot escape disintegration, but must eventually die and decompose. And again, this isn't a meditation to indulge in some kind of morbid obsession or infatuation with the body, but it's to help to sever that egotistic clinging that we have to existence with that contemplation that's power enough to kind of take away that hold that we have toward the body and see it as impermanent. So that's the 4 exercises of the first contemplation of body. The second contemplation of mindfulness, of right mindfulness, is contemplation of feeling. And in the Abhidharma, which is the Buddhist psychology, lists 51 kinds of mental formations, and feeling is one of them. And so to observe our feelings, we simply are sitting and categorizing feelings into either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings, right? Because in our body, we have a plethora of feelings, right? If you think of your body as this ocean, every drop of water in you is a different type of feeling. And unfortunately, we tend to ascribe those feelings to ourselves, to the me and I and mine, right? I'm feeling this way, I'm like this, I'm etc., etc. When really the feeling isn't yours. It's just a feeling from the experience that we're having in life. And so when we are feeling something, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, we simply just categorize it as pleasant or unpleasant. Or if you're agitated, agitation, anger, happiness, sadness, etc., etc. We're trying to essentially let go of any subjective views, any subjective feelings that we have towards our experience, and just let it be as it is, right? Without adding any of that extra nonsense, any extraness to it, right? The third contemplation is the state of mind or mental formations. And so to be aware of the mind is to be aware of those mental formations, right? And formations here is a Buddhist technical term for the most part. And it's really anything that is formed, right? That is made of something else is called a formation. So a flower is a formation. Anger is a mental formation. Some formations that we have are present all the time within all of us, and we can call those universal formations like contact, attention, feeling, perception, volition. Some may arise only during certain situations or circumstances like zeal or determination, mindfulness, concentration, or wisdom. Some will help us with our practice, right? Whether they are wholesome or beneficial formations. Some cause us suffering, as we know, and they are unwholesome or unbeneficial formations. But as we kind of discussed in right effort, right, these formations are also seeds in our mental, these are seeds in our field of consciousness, right? And so all these seeds are either wholesome, unwholesome, or neutral. And depending on how we water them or what seeds we water, those are the seeds that are going to grow, right? Those are the seeds that are going to be either wholesome, unwholesome, or neutral. And depending on our perceptions and depending on how we react to things, we're either going to water the wholesome seeds or the unwholesome seeds, right? And those reactions work with how people, with what people may say to us, what people may do to us, what we may see in the world, right? And so depending on how we view and accept our experience, that experience is what will be the fuel that's watering those seeds. So which is why we emphasize mindfulness so much, why we emphasize watching our mind and watching our reactions to things, right? Because your reactions are 100% the what's the word I'm looking for? The result of your mental formation, the result of your perceptions and your ideas and your thoughts and opinions and all these other things that control your world, right? And so if we have power over them or control over them, then we have control over our suffering. We have control over our own happiness. Because depending on your reaction to things and how you understand things, how you observe things, and how you experience things, those are going to be the conditions that are either going to cause you suffering or happiness, right? Depending on how you react to them, depending on how you understand them, depending on how you accept them or don't accept them. So some of our basic unwholesome mental formations that are included in the Abhidharma, of the Buddhist psychology, is greed, hatred, ignorance, pride, doubt, and views. And some of the other ones that create the 51 formations are anger, malice, hypocrisy, malevolence, jealousy, selfishness, deception, guile, unwholesome excitement, the wish to harm, immodesty, arrogance, dullness, agitation, lack of faith, indolence, carelessness, forgetfulness, distraction, and lack of attention. Whew. That's a lot, right? So every time a mental formation arises, right, we can practice that mere recognition of what that is. So when we're agitated, we can just say, I'm agitated, right? And mindfulness is already there. And so until we recognize agitation as agitation, it will continue to push us around, and we won't really know what's going on or why, right? Which is why we have to question things. Which is why we practice why. Why am I agitated, right? You're not just agitated for no reason, right? We may say, oh, this person's agitating me, but why, right? What are they doing? What exactly is the core problem here, right? It's not just the person, right? Yeah, maybe you don't like them. Maybe they said something wrong or did something that you didn't like, but that's not good enough of an excuse to evaluate why, right? So that's why we go deeper and continue to ask that question of why, right? And it's until we get to that core reason, right, which may take some time for the most part, until we get to that core reason and know exactly the true essence of that agitation. It's only then where we can start to actually fight against it or fight with it, I guess, sometimes, right? And it may be something very stupid or mundane or unhelpful sometimes, right? But sometimes it does bring an aha moment, and you have this recognition of, oh, it's this person or this situation or this thing that's causing me to feel this way or to act this way. And at that point, you have something concrete to work with, right? So if it's a person, you can say, oh, this person somehow, or not somehow, but this person is the reason that's causing me to suffer, or to causing me to act this way, or to feel this way, or to believe in this way. Now you have something to do, right? And now that you know that it's a person, specifically this person, now you have some decisions to make, right? Whether it's to distance yourself from this person, whether it's to cut them out entirely out of your life, or to change the type of relationship you have with them, you'll know what needs to be done. But at least now you know the reason of that suffering, right? And so as we start to practice more and be more mindful, right, this mindful starts to help us look deeply into kind of the depths and the core of our consciousness. And every time one of the 51 mental formations arises, we can acknowledge its presence, look deeply into it, and really see its nature of impermanence and interbeing, interconnectedness, right? Because all mental formations, regardless of its intensity or its subtlety, are all have the same one thing in common, which is what? Close. Impermanence, right? Everything, all our feelings, all our mental formations, anything that arises is guaranteed to cease, right? And so the next time we're angry, if you can remind yourself that this is just anger, and anger is a mental formation that arises, has some sort of something that's doing, right? It's causing us to feel a certain way or do certain things or feel certain things, but eventually it will disappear, right? And knowing that it'll cease should, if we're mindful enough, should give you that kind of sigh of relief, right? Like, yeah, I'm angry, but I'm not going to be angry forever. Maybe angry for a few minutes, maybe an hour, heck, maybe even a day or two. But eventually, we'll forget all about that anger. Sometimes you'll even forget why you're even angry. You'll forget the cause of that anger. Why was I angry in the first place, right? Think of I don't know, any argument you may have had with someone in the past, right? Unless it's an argument that caused huge chaos or a breakup or some schism or a war. Most arguments that we have with people we forget about, right? We forget the reason why we were angry in the first place. And so if you forgot the reason why you're angry, well then, doesn't that kind of make the whole anger ordeal kind of dumb, right? The fourth and last contemplation is contemplation of phenomena, or dharma sometimes called. The phenomena here means objects of mind, right? So each of our mental formations has to have an object. So if you're angry, you're angry at someone or something, and that person can be called the object of your mind. And so when you remember someone or something that is the object of your mind, then there are 51 kinds of mental formations. So there are 51 kinds of objects of mind. Now, at least for this fourth foundation is where we start to really pay attention to what is arising, right? So in the previous in the contemplations, we know that this is happening because of my body, this is happening because of my mind, this is happening because of my feelings. And now we're questioning all that kind of, all that together. And the Buddha puts the fourth foundation in 5 groups. And the first group, in 5 groups: the 5 hindrances, the 5 aggregates, the 6 inner and 6 outer senses, which is just our senses and their consciousnesses. So eye to form, ear to sound, etc., etc. The 7 factors of enlightenment and the 4 noble truths. So of these 5, the 5 hindrances and the 7 factors of enlightenment require some special attention, because they are the principal impediments, the 5 hindrances, and the 7 factors are the aids to our liberation. And so our meditation or our unmindfulness is due to the 5 hindrances. 5 hindrances are ill will, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, and doubt. All right, these are the 5 hindrances. These are the hindrances that cause our meditation to not be perfect, and they are the reasons why our mindfulness is imperfect and our awareness is imperfect. And then we use the 7 factors as those aids, as those antidotes to those hindrances. And the 7 factors is mindfulness, investigation, energy, rapture, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. So when the hindrances arise, right, we're simply, again, we're going back to the categorization of those hindrances. What bucket does this hindrance fall into, right? And again, you can either, depending on your level of meditation, right? Typically, at the very first, we want to just stick to pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, right? Because it's easy to ascribe feelings or emotions or whatever in those 3 buckets, right? It's pretty easy. Then as we start to practice more and advance a little bit more, then we can use the 5 hindrances as those buckets. So whatever arises during meditation, it doesn't fall under the bucket of desire. It doesn't fall under the bucket of ill will, of sloth and torpor, or laziness. It Does it fall into the bucket of restlessness, too much energy? Or is it because of doubt? Doubt in the practice, doubt in the teachings, right? And then we can use those buckets and assess the fullness of those buckets and see where we really need to work more toward. And as we start to develop and really sense those hindrances and use the factors or the 7 factors of alignment to aid and help overcome those hindrances. The same way our practice of meditation at first is weak and that's what I'm looking for. Distracted, maybe a good word is weak and distracted, right? As we start to practice more and develop our practice more in our meditation techniques, then they become stronger, and then we'll start to see how our mindfulness bleeds into these factors of enlightenment, right? Because our mindfulness becomes stronger, then that naturally will strengthen our investigation, right? Investigation is the second factor. And here is investigation also is contemplation, right? Contemplating those different factors, contemplating the 4 factors, 4 foundations of mindfulness that arise, or anything else that arises, we can contemplate. So then that investigation, that contemplation turns into energy. It's the energy that we need to continue to practice. It's the energy that we need to study and to sit for longer periods of time, or to add to our meditation. And with that energy, that gives rise to rapture or to joy, right? Piti, which is one of the factors, one of the jhana factors of meditation. And rapture or piti or joy is the joy that arises during meditation. So as we start to progress in our meditation practice and able to start to calm the mind more, the mind starts to settle down to such a point where there's this natural feeling of joy that arises in the body. The body starts to feel good, right? The mind and body is synchronized to at this point, and where the senses start to drop, and time starts to not feel non-existent, almost. And so then this rapture leads to tranquility, and this tranquility leads to one-pointedness concentration, and that concentration leads to equanimity. And once we've reached equanimity, then we've reached to we would reach a point of meditation where we call axis concentration, right? Ikagata, which is really the correct or the most correct state of mind or state of meditation that we want to be in. This is the point where we're able to maintain and hold our object of meditation for at least the majority of our session, right? Where distractions or thoughts that arise are not strong enough to take over your object of meditation. Where they may arise and they're kind of just wispy and in the background, but they're not strong enough to completely take over that object of meditation, right? I'll just use the breath for the example here. So the breath is your object of meditation. It's strong, it's in the foreground, and it's there, and you've held on to it for the majority of your session. And then these distractions arise, right? Maybe the door opens, or the AC goes on and off, or the dogs start barking, or you hear hammering from some construction. But it arises, and you have this the bare recognition of it, right? And again, we're just going back to the labeling. So it's noise, it's AC, it's dog, it's barking, it's door, right? It's just the bare reality of whatever is arising, right? There's no storytelling, there's no adding description, there's no adding any extra detail to it. You're just recognizing its actual nature, right? Because the mind is kind of childish, right? It's wanting to distract you as much as possible. But as soon as you catch it, it's like, all right, you caught me, and it'll just run away, right? You go back to your object of meditation. And so if that's the case, where we're just making that recognition, making that label, it'll have that, all right, you caught me, and it'll just go away, right? And then another one comes up, you recognize it, and it'll go away. Another one comes up, you recognize it, and it goes away. And you continue to do this over and over again. And eventually, right, because again, meditation is training the mind will eventually get to the point where those distractions will start to lessen more and more over time. So maybe you have 30 distractions today. Next week you have 29 distractions. The week after that you have 28, 27, 20, maybe you'll go back to 29 again. It'll come back down to 26, right? So, but this fluctuation is actually pretty much is a good sign, right? Because that way you know the mind is actually doing something, right? That training of the mind is functioning in some way. But eventually, again, those distractions will lessen and lessen and lessen, and you'll get to the point of this idea of what everybody thinks meditation is, which is having no thoughts and no thinking whatsoever, right? Which is, as you may know, not ideal, not exactly doable, right? Even Zen masters have distractions. The difference between a Zen master and a non-Zen master is when a distraction arises, they know a distraction has arisen, and they attack it as quickly as possible, right? And so even if you have a million distractions in your 30-minute session, as long as you caught it a million times, you've done exactly what you're supposed to do in meditation, right? Meditation isn't just sitting and doing nothing. What's the point? You're wasting time. Meditation is there to do something, right? To exercise the mind in some way, shape, or form in whatever method that you're using. But as long as a distraction arises and you've caught it, whether it takes a few seconds, a few minutes, the whole session, as long as you've caught it, you've done exactly what you're supposed to be doing in meditation, right? You've acknowledged it, you've labeled it, and it goes away. Another one comes up, you've acknowledged it, you've labeled it, and it'll go away. Let it happen 1,000 times, you've succeeded 1,000 times. So don't get discouraged if you have distractions arising all the time. You should be patting yourself on the back because you've caught every single one of them, regardless of how long it takes. That is the object of meditation. That is the purpose of meditation. That is your goal, is to catch those distractions. That's the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of body, mind, body, feeling, mind, mental, and objects of mind. And that concludes mindfulness. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts.
I wanted to know, where does denial fit in right meditation?
Denial? Denial of what?
Let's say denial of a toxic substance.
Okay.
Where does it fit in? So, is it a defensivism that you accept the thought and make it your own? Why is denial, it's not, obviously not right mindfulness, but what does it say?
Denial is simply wanting something to be different other than what it is, essentially, right? Is the denial of the body getting older. It's the denial that drugs aren't helping or are helping. It's a denial that the world isn't going into chaos, right? It's wanting something to be different than other than what it is. And so that's going to fall into mental formations, because it's a mental formation. You're denying something that you're perceiving. And so it'll still fall under the same exercise of seeing its impermanence, right? And accepting it for what it is. Because again, denial is just wanting things to be different than what they are, right? But our denials are most denials are very subjective, right? That means it's going to be one of those, it's not you, it's me situations, right? And so that's where you tackle it and question that whole story of whatever you're denying or feeling denial toward. Why?
So it's attaching that story.
Right. Our job here is to detach from those stories, to detach from our perceptions and our desires and our perceptions that causes suffering. Good question. What else? Mm-hmm. Man-made, yeah. Denial in this case would also fall under the foundation of feeling, right? Well, yeah, foundation of feeling. And a good kind of reminder to ourselves when feelings are involved is to remember that when our feelings are stronger than our mindfulness, then we're going to suffer, right? Because if you're truly mindful, if you're being mindful, you're correctly being mindful of whatever you're thinking or feeling or seeing or hearing or smelling or tasting, anything, if you're truly mindful without attaching any subjectivity to it, and then you can see it for what it truly is without having to deny it, without having to disagree with it, without having to doubt it. It just is, right? And wanting things to be different than what they are, it's just going to cause you suffering because you have zero control for the most part in changing the things of the world and changing reality. If something has already happened, it's already happened. There's nothing you can do to ever change it. It's already completed. You may be able to change future outcomes because of it, but if something has already happened and it's already caused you doubt or denial or craving or desire, whatever it may be, there's nothing else you can do besides accept it and then work on not recreating that same suffering again in the future. Anything else? Okay. I'm out of time anyway, so please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times, and we'll go to chanting. Namo Shakya Mo For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo Shakya. And the bell. Speech and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the bell. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. Gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space and time. May it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful efforts, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings be companions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Incense in the censer now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every place auspicious path. Hearing our sincere intention, thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body. Homage to the incense cloud canopy Bodhisattva and gray Bodhisattva. To the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely Sangha throughout the Dharma realm and the realm of empties and 3 periods of time. To the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni all dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattvas and the glorious Mount assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. To Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion, Bodhisattva, great strength, Bodhisattva, first or great vow, Bodhisattva, and of assembly of great pure sea like Bodhisattva. O great compassionate Buddhas and Unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear and receive and uphold, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. One who bows and the one who is bowed to are both by nature empty. Therefore, the communication between them is inexpressibly pure. Our practice center is the net of Indra, reflecting all Buddhas everywhere, as my own person reflects in all Buddha, to whom with my whole life I go for refuge. Light in the 10 directions, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to whom we bow in gratitude. And living the way of awareness in the very midst of suffering and confusion, Shakyamuni Buddha, the awakened, to whom we bow in gratitude. Through ignorance awakening our hearts and our minds, Manjushri, the Buddha, What is deep and lovely, we now have a chance to see it and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the deep course of Prajnaparamita, shed light on the five skandhas and found them equally empty. After this penetration, he overcame ill-being. Listen, Shariputra, form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is not other. Emptiness is not other than form. The same is true with feelings, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Listen, Shariputra, all dharmas are marked with emptiness. They are neither produced nor destroyed, neither defiled nor immaculate, neither increasing nor decreased. Therefore, in emptiness there is neither form nor feelings, nor perceptions, nor mental formations, nor conscious, no eye or ear or nose or tongue or body or mind, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no object of mind, no realms of elements, no interdependent origins, and no extinction, no ill-being, no cause of ill-being, no end of ill-being, and no path, no understanding, no attainment, because there is no attainment. The Bodhisattvas grounded in Prajnaparamita find no obstacles for their minds, having no obstacles. They overcome fear, liberating themselves forever from illusion and realizing perfect nirvana. All Buddhas in the past, present, and future arrive at Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Therefore, one should know that perfect understanding is the highest mantra, the unequaled mantra, the destroyer of ill-being, the incorruptible. Prajnaparamita should therefore be proclaimed. Gate, gate, para, samgate, bodhi, swaha, gate, para, samgate, bodhi, swaha, gate, para, samgate, bodhi, swaha. Invoke your name, Avalokiteshvara. We aspire to learn your way of listening in order to help relieve the suffering in the world. You know how to listen in order to understand. We invoke your name in order to practice listening with all our attention and open-heartedness. We will sit and listen without any prejudice. We will sit and listen without judging or reacting. We will sit and listen in order to understand. We will sit and listen so attentively that we will be able to hear what the other person is saying and also what is being left unsaid. We know that just by listening deep, we already alleviate a great deal of pain and suffering in the other person. Your name, Manjushri, we aspire to learn your way, which is to be still and to look deeply into the heart of things and into the hearts of people. We will look with all our attention and open-hearted. We will look with unprejudiced eyes. We will look without judging or reacting. We will look deeply so that we will be able to see and understand the roots of suffer through the impermanent and selfless nature of all that is. We will practice your way of using the sword of understanding to cut through the bonds of suffer, thus freeing ourselves and other species. Your name, Samanta Bhadra, we aspire to practice your vow rights are not being heard. We know that hell can be found in many places on earth. We will do our best not to contribute to creating more hells on earth and to help transform the hells that already exist. We will practice in order to realize the qualities of perseverance and stability, so that like the earth we can always be supported and faithful to those in need. Refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. In the refuge of Buddha, I clearly see the path of light and beauty in the dwelling in the refuge of Dharma. I learn to open many doors on the path of transformation, dwelling in the refuge of Sangha. Shining light thus supports me, keeping my practice free of obstruction. Refuge in the Buddha, in myself I aspire to help all people recognize their own awakened nature, realizing the mind of love, taking refuge in the Dharma. In myself I aspire to help all people fully master the ways of practice and walk together on the path of liberation, taking refuge in the Sangha. In myself I aspire to help all people build fourfold communities to embrace all beings and support their transformation. Reciting the sutras, practicing the way of awareness, gives rise to benefits without limits. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, and numerous beings who give